The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hey, this is Matt Landry, the voice of Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars The Clone Wars. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars. This is where the fun begins.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 159.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hi, I'm Robert King, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. From movies to books, TV shows, and more, we're looking at the deeper themes and meanings found in Star Wars. Today, we're talking about The Bad Batch, episode 11 of season 2. It's called Metamorphosis. Joining me today on the panel are Kathryn Laffrey. Hi, Kathryn.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. And we also have Jon Koral. How's it going, John?
I'm going well.
It's good to have you. So here we are back with The Bad Batch. And I'll do a quick summary for those who like their spoilers up front. Episode 11 starts with a clone commando racing through the corridors of a damaged transport from something scary. And then we cut away from the something scary to a similar undamaged transport arriving at Mount Tantus, where a certain Dr. Royce Hemlock comes out and tries to convince an imprisoned Nala Se to help with the Emperor's cloning research. But she refuses, because we like Nala Se. Meanwhile, our team leader, Sid, tries to assign the Bad Batch to recover the cargo from this damaged transport, and they grudgingly agree. They find the transport now stranded on a planet near a village, and they discover that the cargo is a cloned Zillo Beast, which grows exponentially as it feeds on more energy. The Batch try to stop it from destroying the village, but an Imperial fleet arrives to capture it, and to capture the villagers as well, and that forces the Batch to flee. But at least they have the data from the transport's computer. Back to Mount Tantus, where Dr. Hemlock brings in Lama Su to help him persuade Nala Se. And Lama Su suggests that Omega is the key to getting Nala Se to cooperate. And that's where we leave it on this dramatic note of, I don't know, betrayal, perhaps? It's a lot going on. And I think the first thing to talk about is that, hey, we've been talking about The Mandalorian for a few weeks, and now we're back on The Bad Batch. Now, we did this because Disney Plus decided to drop The Mandalorian in the middle of The Bad Batch season. And knowing that there were probably going to be a lot more viewers following The Mandalorian, we decided to follow those episodes as they were airing. And now we're coming back to catch up on The Bad Batch. But it's interesting because we have spent the first part of The Bad Batch season having our podcasts, recording our podcasts as the episodes dropped. And now the whole season's out. And so have you guys, I've seen all of the rest of the season, so I know what's coming now. Have you guys seen the rest of the season, or are you sort of watching it in podcast order?
No, I couldn't stop watching it. It's too fun to let it go. It was like our weekly thing to do, so had to watch it all.
Yeah.
So yes, I did see it all.
Yeah, well, this was my first episode back since The Mandalorian, so I haven't seen any since then. I mean, I've heard some comments from people, but I'm trying not to do too much spoiler stuff. But I will probably watch the rest later this week now that The Mandalorian's done. But yeah, this is still kind of new to me.
I will say, yeah, it's I had a hard time not watching the rest of the Bad Batch as quickly as I could myself. You've got a fun ride ahead of you, John. But Kathryn, I suppose we should try to keep some spoilers out from, so that we don't ruin it for John.
Yeah, we won't tell him about Darth Vader. I mean,
yeah, and definitely not how Han Solo becomes Omega's best friend. Yeah, okay. None of that actually happens. No. There's actually, this is a really simple episode in a lot of ways. Sort of this framing narrative, and then you've got the action in the middle, and it's really exciting. But I wanted to talk about that cold open for just a moment, because it did a thing that I particularly like, and I'd love to get your feedback on it. It took an enemy, a bad guy, this clone commando, who is worse than the rest of the, they're more powerful and stronger than the rest of the clones, and is definitely loyal to the Empire. And it made him the hero of this. He's or rather the victim.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it for me anyway, it got me to sympathize with the clone commando in a way that I haven't normally done. Usually it's easy to see them as, oh, they're bad guys, they're cannon fodder, shoot them down. But I was genuinely connected to this anonymous clone commando. I don't know. What did you guys think about that opening scene and the way they opened the episode?
It was a great opening as far as feeling like a monster horror flick. So it kind of, gave you, that familiar feel of aliens and stuff like that. So I liked that cold opening like that. I didn't have much sympathy for the trooper because I had a funny feeling they were up to no good to begin with. So I had more sympathy for the poor little medical droid that was discovered later.
Oh yeah, danger. Danger.
I mean, I like the tension it built and stuff, because it did feel like a horror flick kind of, with the running down the hallway by himself and hearing the noises in the background, and then just being snatched away, and that, and of course having an issue with that electro staff or whatever, and it kind of made it. I mean, it added some tension, and then later, then in the next, then when the Bad Batch get the call, it really builds up. Then, okay, this isn't going to be as easy as they think, because we know something they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is it Omega who says, how hard can it be recovering a little cargo?
Right.
Yeah. It's nothing to looting a ship.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, we've done this before. Yeah. So then we get to Mount Tantus, and this is the framing for the whole episode is shenanigans on Mount Tantus, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time we've met Dr. Hemlock, whose name is definitely not a sign of how bad he is or anything, and I'm sure Hemlock is just normal family name.
It's a cute little innocent flower, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a pretty little flower. Nothing wrong with Hemlock. Yeah, the weird thing is the whole time I watched it, I was like, why does he seem so familiar? I could have sworn he had appeared in earlier episodes or somewhere in Clone Wars. I was going through things going, he's got to be in there. When I, look at Wikipedia and they say, no, his first appearance was this episode. I was like, really? Because he just seems so familiar.
I thought he looked kind of familiar too, but then depending on the angle that they showed him, I thought he kind of almost looked like, like a clone, with the haircut and stuff like that. And I was just and facial features some. So I was wondering if maybe I was just thinking him as a, standard kind of clone, as, even though he's not. But I mean, that's because I'm like, he does look familiar, but who does?
It was interesting because I rewatched all of the Bad Batch up to this point. Well, just the season up to this point, just because I wanted to get back into the groove of it again. And the only other character that looks like him is the oldest boy from that mining operation episode. They both have the little scar in the eyebrow, about the same shaped face. I just hope they weren't just reusing some CGI data to create Hemlock, but it's just like, wow, is it his dad? Did his dad ditch him? I don't know.
No, it is a pretty effective character design, and the voice is very well, not to get too much ahead of ourselves, but the voice was kind of like the same approach taken to Grand Admiral Thrawn, very scary, severe character with a very quiet, sort of understated voice. And
little hint of Tarkin in there too.
I was just gonna say, this is a theme that maybe goes all the way back to Tarkin. It kind of gives you a sense of real creepy evil in the character, and he tries so hard to sound reasonable, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it's good to see Nala Se again, even if she's in prison. And I loved her principled stance. I loved that she was just, it's like, you'll find it difficult to, how did she put it? I didn't write it down, but it was something like, I find it hard to be interested in my old work, now that the Empire has destroyed my entire civilization or something.
Yeah. And she looked like physically destroyed herself. Especially going back and rewatching, you see her early on, especially when she's with Omega in like early episodes of season 1. And she's just like this tall, standing chameleon woman. And it's like, oh, then you see her in the prison and she looks a little thinner and definitely a little heavier head, kind of sagging down.
Yeah.
And one thing too I saw was it seemed like she had a little flicker of surprise in her eye when he said, well, your research still is around, but even if your city isn't. And then there's just a slight flicker. It seemed like she was like a little surprised, like, oh, and then of course, the doctor explains that it's for a greater purpose, the Emperor's purpose.
Yes.
I thought it was interesting. He said it's been a while, so he has worked with her before. That'll be interesting backstory.
So it seems, yeah. Which is why I'm not entirely sure this is the first time we've met him, right. But yeah, I didn't see any other credits for him, so.
Well, I mean, this jumps ahead some too, but when Omega says she knew of other cloning things, but they were off-world, so perhaps that's how. He was the off-world cloning doctor or something, maybe, that worked with her somehow. And so it wouldn't be in the credits, but it would be, that would have been perhaps his contact.
Yeah, it occurs to me that they're like, they are both of them like trying to claim a higher purpose for their actions. And Dr. Hemlock is claiming the Emperor's purpose is a greater purpose. It's a greater good. And she's like, well, you took away the greater good that I knew of, my civilization, my people, my, the whole way of life that we had, you've destroyed what, and, he seems to find inspiration in striving toward a greater good that, we all know is not actually good. But she seems to find strength in the thought that, like, you've taken away all of the good that there is, and you can't take anything else away from me. You have no leverage over me. And I just think, like, from an ethical point of view, it's like what motivates us to the good is, and I don't know, we're still in the Easter season, and so I'm thinking about how the resurrection like motivated the early apostles and the early disciples to go out without fear of what anyone else would do to them. And it's almost like there's a combination of the two. Like we know that Christ rose from the dead, right? And so we have a greater good, but we also know that, you can no longer threaten us with death. Like the idea of death is no longer a threat to those who have the hope of the resurrection. And
no, she's really standing on her principles, and she had much more in the way of strong principles compared to some of the other people she worked with. In the way that she protected Omega early on, letting them get away, letting her leave. So there's definitely something there. And even just seeing her sitting there in the cell, it's like you think about other captured scientists in previous wars, and their information could easily be taken and used against their people, which her people have been destroyed, but against those that she cares about, and the truth that she knows that this is a big mistake, the way the Emperor wants to go with things. So it's interesting to see how she's put in that situation of, do I comply or do I sit strong and protest?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into politics here, but when you talk about politics, and you have one issue and you have both sides, both of them see a higher good, and they could be completely at odds with each other. So it's kind of like, her higher good is one way, Dr. Hemlock's is the other way. And they all see a higher good in that technology, but, for completely different reasons. And like I said, and today, if, whatever topic you want to talk about in politics, it can be extreme on, our people can see two different goods for the same thing, or, so that's why, I think they can both be pretty emphatic about their, or strong about their opinions on it too.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if this applies to Star Wars, because I think we're all pretty clear that the Emperor's purposes are straight up evil. But it is, one of the things in, whether it's, I'm in conversation with like other Christians online and, Protestants and Orthodox and so on, as well as Catholics. And as you say, John, in the world of politics, it's so easy to simply dismiss someone who disagrees with me as, just evil and wrong, and not recognize, they're looking for something good as well. And maybe I should at least try to understand what the good is that they're looking for.
Well, and even with Andor and stuff like that, a lot of that, what the good people are looking for with the Empire is they don't know the Emperor's motives, but they see peace and order, as kind of the higher good. And there's probably a lot of people, that join the Imperial side of the Empire thinking this is what we're doing and these are the good causes. And then they don't know the Emperor's nefarious background of what he's intending to do. So you have a lot of good-hearted people on one side that might, just don't know too.
Yeah, we also meet another character in this sequence named Emery Carr. I'm not sure her name was actually given in this episode, but she's listed in the credits. She seems to be Dr. Hemlock's assistant. And you can tell her by her sort of red goggles. And I don't know what I think I'll start with just John. What did you like? Did she strike you at all in any way?
I don't remember too much. Other than I did see they did mention her first name is Emery, but they didn't. I don't think they said her last name is Carr. Because as I was taking my notes, I went back and put with the assistant. But she just seemed like a typical assistant to me, like there to help him out and keep him up to date with, all the things that were going on. Because she's the one that reported they lost contact with Transport 904, and then I guess she knew the other part with, the prime minister being the other member of Tapoka City being the, I always want to say tapioca instead of Tapoka. And but the prime minister was still one of the people that was left over from the Kaminoan. So
yeah, I have to say I didn't catch on my first watch through, but watching through again, I get definitely the feeling like she's not just there for a standard assistant, that she's probably going to have a role to play.
Yeah, she comes across as someone who's doing her job, not fully invested in the ideas.
Yeah. Anything more to say about the Mount Tantus situation, whether the part at the beginning or the part at the end of the episode?
Well, I love seeing Mount Tantus because of the Timothy Zahn books and all that was happening in Mount Tantus. I also found it interesting that Hemlock has a gloved left hand that he rubs repeatedly. And it made me think back to those books because of what was on Mount Tantus that was used against Luke Skywalker. And if you guys want spoilers, I'll spoil those, original trilogy books.
Well, these are the Legends books.
The Legends
now
books, yes.
that are, but that do seem to be taking more and more of an inspiring role for Filoni and the writers of the Star Wars series, right?
Yeah. Let's just say Luke's left hand happens to be in Mount Tantus.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. The Emperor and his trophies.
Yes. Well,
I don't know. I always wondered, did Hemlock donate his left hand to the cause for an experiment? Don't know. I want some more on this man. Gotta know more.
we may find out.
Did he lose it to a cloned creature and then had
there you go.
rebuilt, or something?
Hopefully something bit it off.
Yeah.
Intriguing. Yeah. I mean, it all bears watching.
There's much more to this man.
Well, let's move on to the main action of the episode then, which is all about this cargo on the downed transport, and Sid hears of it rather conveniently. Let's talk about Sid for a bit, because I know we've been talking about how the Bad Batch have been increasingly uncomfortable with their arrangement with Sid, and I think I did not go back and rewatch all of the episodes, so Kathryn, you can correct me on this, but I think this is the first time they explicitly talk about breaking off from Sid.
Well, because in the episode previous, she just left him stranded. Figure your way home. I don't care.
Yeah, that's what her goodwill looks like.
I love how all she does is cave on negotiations. And then a threat, okay, 50%, but don't forget, I know who you are. It's like,
yeah,
she likes playing both sides of the game, that's for sure.
Well, in watching it, I mean, it seemed to me that Sid has become, earlier in the season, she seems to have been more of a likable character, and now she seems a harsher and then less likable character. And I think in the past, the Bad Batch have talked about leaving her, but nothing in like, oh, this next one will be our last one. I mean, there was one of them, I guess, where maybe the reward was going to be so high, well, they could pay off their debts, but I don't think they were ready to move on and stuff. So I think, you could tell they've had issues like, what should we do with our future? And then that's where, Echo leaves for Tech or Rex and stuff down the line. And so, they've had thoughts about it, but they've never said, hey, this will be our last one and then let's move on kind of thing. I mean, so they seem like they're definitely ready to cut loose.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how they seem like they're at the point where they're not willing to, take any of her BS anymore. But they're not quite at the point of like, they do acknowledge that, she's been there in a way for us and we do want to do this, one last job. They're willing to do the one last job. Yeah, it's almost like they are recognizing that she's not entirely doing right by them, but they are unwilling to not do right by her. Like they still want to hold on to the moral high ground in a way.
Well, part of it too, though, is she knows a lot about them. And that's what Tech says is like, well, I think he's afraid that if, they break loose without the right way, then, then their information will be out there and cause them lots of trouble and stuff too.
Yeah.
And then, I have one question here, and I just thought of it as, Omega's the one that was speaking, emotionally about it. Like, Sid, you're the one that left us, that whole thing. And so she was kind of, while the guys were back there. Is that because she's more of she's grown, but she's still a child. Whereas the other guys, she's like speaking for for what they feel, but they don't show the emotions because they're the soldiers kind of thing, they'll show some emotion with it, but it just seemed to me a little bit that, she's always the one, especially when they get to the ship later on too. It's like, come on, let's find the survivor. Whereas they're just, is that because more that even though they're, siblings, is that more because, the age difference and the fact that they're more soldier built and she's more, I don't know, just typical child grown. I don't know.
She is perfectly 13 years old.
Yeah.
I'd have to say I've done the most of my work as a coach and teacher with that age group. And girls at that age group have the ability to go completely innocent and completely adult in the same sentence. So she is exactly like I expect her to be. I've had kids where it's like, they get super emotional about something and then all of a sudden they'll just have a deep, profound adult statement that you're like, yes, that's true. So it's absolutely that age group girl. She is right in there. My favorite age group to work with too, because they also want to please. They're at that age where they want to be adult accepted. So there's that desire to please and to learn. And so, yeah, she fits all the marks for that age group for me.
Yeah. And we had a nice little close up on Hunter as he was like making the decision. And we've talked a bit this season about how they've done a lot of focus, character focus on others, especially on Tech. And Hunter seems to have gotten into the background, except I think they keep putting in these quiet little moments with Hunter, showing him sort of trying to weigh the decisions of leadership and trying to be the responsible one for the group. And I thought that was, there's no dialogue. It's just, a close up on his face as he is weighing the decision. And
well, I wrote down he sighed.
It sounds like another quiet father figure. Good old Saint Joseph. You don't have to say anything, just do. So, and during negotiations, it was really cute because, Sid is gradually increasing 35%. That's what we already get. And then she says 40. And as soon as she says 40, Wrecker is like, oh, yeah. And then he looks over at Hunter and sees that he's serious. And he goes, tries to be all serious again. So it's it's like, oh, I got to stay with the group on this one. So, yeah, it's just neat to see that quiet, strong father role that he's still providing for the group.
Well, that he's trying to provide. I think he's really struggling, though. And I like that they show the struggle of doing that. And you were going to say something, John.
Well, I was just saying what I wrote down at that point, too. I said he sighed when he was asked about how hard could it be, by Omega. And he just had a sigh. And my note I thought about was he just seems older in that picture. It's like he seems a little more weathered and Like, I mean, granted, they age quicker too because of that, you know, but still, you can tell, like you were saying, I think that he's been taking on more of a burden of being the leader and trying to, you know, I think especially without Echo there as well, because you have Tech who's all technical, you have Wrecker who's kind of childlike, and then you have, you know.
Yeah, he's the closest thing to a full adult there.
Yeah.
So then they get into the real action. And here's where those there's those horror vibes. I was definitely getting alien vibes myself when they get to the ship and start exploring. Of course, let's split up. What could possibly go wrong?
And yeah, go to the shed where the where the chainsaws are. Why not?
Yeah. Let's restore the power to the ship. What could go wrong? And like even the introduction of the Zillo monster with the, you know, the dripping and the first shot of its head, and the character design is so much like the xenomorph from Aliens.
Mm-hmm. And did anybody else watch it in surround sound?
Headphones.
Oh, okay. Because I had it. We had to rewatch it again at night because with it being, you know, longer days now and it's being so dark, I was like, okay, we got to watch this again. Shut off all the lights. Had the surround sound going, and our two rear speakers are right behind the couch in the perfect way. So you hear those little like growls and drips and tings, and oh man, in the dark that was a lot scarier.
Nice. Do you guys enjoy horror movies just generally?
I can't watch horror movies. I'm way too visual being an artist, and images will stick in my head way too long. I watched one horror movie when I was a kid in school at a sleepover party. It was the old Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, it's a classic.
Had nightmares for 3 weeks. Anytime our furnace kicked on at home, I would just be screaming. My stuffed animal laying next to me, I thought it was one of the pods. It was like, ah. So my mom's like, I don't think you can watch horror movies. And I don't. Heck, I even had to watch Lord of the Rings with my eyes covered half the time the first time I saw it.
Oh, wow. Oh.
I've never gotten into the horror movies, but I've gotten into sometimes like suspenseful movies, you know, like some like Alfred Hitchcock and those kind of things, you know, or like, but I've never gotten into the horror genre.
I've only recently started to appreciate horror, and I still don't like the 80s slasher movies and that sort of thing, or the movies that are just running from a monster. But I've really begun to appreciate how horror can be an exploration of, you know, what is most important to people, and you know, how do we face the consequences of our actions, and you know, how do we embody our relationship with good and evil, the good and evil in ourselves as well as what's out in the world, and so yeah, like talking about Omega saying there could be survivors, let's go looking for survivors, and Hunter after the Zillo creature escapes, you know, we let it out, we have to go take care of this before it hurts anyone else, and that sense of like exploring the responsibility of, you know, what you're doing. And who was it you, Kathryn, who said you didn't really feel sympathy for the clone trooper because for the clone commando, because like, oh, you figure he was up to no good in the first place, and
he was part of the problem.
yeah and like seeing again like the uncanny justice of the monster you create coming back to destroy you. I know it's obviously this episode didn't go all the way there on its own. Certainly it's the Empire that comes back and kind of takes final responsibility for the Zillo Beast, but I really want to see the Zillo Beast come back later, like come back to bite the Empire. And
yeah, I went back and watched the Clone Wars episodes with the Zillo Beast when it was first introduced. And that added so much to watching this.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I half thought that the Zillo Beast had survived. And I was like, okay, watching it again, I was like, no, they actually did kill it. And, had that great Godzilla theme to it. And, right down to the fact that, here they're using this energy nuke, so to speak, to actually woke it up. Some people thought, oh, accident, coincident. Not with the Emperor. They've always said he's been 2 steps ahead of them the whole time. I swear he had them wait until the troops were in a certain spot and he could set it up because he was working both sides of the fight anyway to let's wake up this beast because there have been all kinds of materials out there that do stop lightsabers. And I think he just needed some and wanted it for himself. So I found it interesting just to rewatch that and that original Zillo Beast seemed, and my husband swears it was Force aware, and I was like, I don't know. And then I read an article that said most of the creatures that have the ability to block or shut off a lightsaber have some sense of the Force that's a little stronger than other animals. And the way that one had seen Palpatine in a hollow saying, just kill it, we'll get the samples we need when it's dead. And the scientist at the time was like, I think it understood what you said, so to speak. And next thing you know, this thing's terrorizing Coruscant, sees a picture of Palpatine and destroys it, and then looks ahead to where Palpatine is. And it's like, well, how did he know he was there? Did he just sense him? Did he smell him? I don't know, but he went right for him in those crazy glowing eyes. Yeah.
It's quite a callback. As you say, the Emperor is always sort of 2 steps ahead. So clearly, sure, the samples we need. So not just the armor plating, but the genetic samples for cloning.
Because he said he wanted a clone of it. Obviously, he made one.
Yeah. So I don't know. Are there any other future uses that you think the Emperor or the writers might use the Zillo Beast for?
Well, they mentioned armor plating.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all part of it.
That's sort of the obvious.
Yeah. The other interesting thing is the fact that it survives on energy. And there was, I think in Screen Crush, they talked about being able to read the monitors with the information about the beast. And it said that its lactic acid levels were 0 on the screen. I'm like going, okay, what is that going to mean? Was it in hibernation, or because it feeds on energy and not, like a sugar or something else, that it never tires unless it's, zapped by the energy ray or whatever that they use from their ships. But it was interesting. It's like, okay, does this thing have some sort of endurance level they were expecting? Or like they showed the smaller version of it as being the feeding stage. And then there's the adult stage. So it's like, once it hits a certain level, does it not need to feed as much? We never saw the large Zillo Beast feeding on energy the way the small one did. Except for in this one, it was still growing because it didn't have its third hand. It had its third arm, but not its third hand yet.
I was just going to say, I wasn't too sure about, other than the armor plating part, what they could do. I mean, I guess the other option would be as if you just wanted to wipe out a small area or something with it and, here, take out the power and then whatever. But, I don't know. It's just, I mean, other than keeping it for more, cloning, I guess, to build to, if they need all that armored plating or something, I don't know.
Well, here's another thought. if it can grow exponentially with energy, and we literally watched it triple in size in this one episode, imagine taking the gene splicing and doing that with a human clone so that you can grow your clones exponentially with a little blast of energy. That would make for a very quick army.
And a very powerful one.
Well, I guess here's what my question is. If it doesn't get energy, does it ever shrink in size again? I mean, is it always that size? Or, it's kind of like, because if you cut off its energy or whatever makes it grow to a certain point, or does it just like die out? Or I don't know. I was just kind of curious,
Well, the one they originally found had been dormant so long that they thought it was extinct. So I think like frogs in the desert, they're alive during the rainy season. They bury themselves in the sand and they can live for several years without anything in this dormant state until it rains again. So maybe the Zillo Beast is like that.
Yeah, and it seems to have been mostly dormant when the ship's power was off. Like it really came back when they turned the power on and it had something to feed on. But
it's really crazy to notice, but it was really cute to say this about a beast. I don't know, but it had baby teeth when it was little on the ship. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but its teeth were like really tiny, kind of sticking out of the gums. And then as it gets bigger, the Zillo Beast has rows of teeth like a shark. So I thought it was kind of interesting that they show the baby version of it with little baby teeth.
I mean, cute in a deadly,
Monster.
Monstrous sort of way. Yeah. Yeah. I know. And then well, anything else to say about the Zillo Beast or that whole sequence of, I mean, we see, I guess, we see the Bad Batch take off. We don't know where they're going to. They just shoot off into hyperspace, and we stay with the Imperials who are taking the villagers captive because, as we later find out, the Dr. Hemlock does not want any witnesses to the Zillo Beast.
One thing going back before they took off, just a couple things. One was seeing the shock on Omega's face when Tech said, "Yeah, the Beast probably ate the crew."
Gosh, yes.
And then she goes, "It ate the crew," and then Wrecker's like, "How is that helping Tech?"
Yes.
And stuff. But it was just that. But that
kind
of.
But then that's they ate the crew.
But that shows her innocence and stuff of being the 13-year-old child versus the adult that she can be then in other scenes, and because that you really notice that really impacted her. And then what was it? There was something, but and then the fact that Tech ended up getting all that data too, or at least most of it. So he downloaded a ton of that information. We don't know if he did get everything before that ship got blown up by the Empire. But he was there making sure he was busily downloading stuff before on his data pad before they ran out of there. So how much information did he get, and what is all that information? It's like, and that's was pretty interesting too. It's like
it's enough that they do want to send it to Echo and Rex, and that's kind of significant itself. I mean, they never really say why Echo joined Rex and the others didn't, but it kind of seems that, Echo sees this is a fight I have to fight, and the others are saying we don't want to be involved in the fight.
Yeah, Echo, I think, has more of a history with the other brothers that he's trying to save.
Oh, certainly.
So he gets it more where, I think especially for Hunter, they feel like their job is to protect Omega. So I don't think they're ready to be in a fight yet.
And yet by sending this data to Echo and Rex, it almost felt to me like it's time to join the fight. Like almost like it's a step in that direction, at least.
Like being an informer instead of an actual soldier. in the fight.
Yeah.
Well, and as they're getting more information though about what, about the cloning and what's, putting bits and pieces together about the Empire, then they see how dangerous it is, or it begins to see more just how dangerous it is, and maybe what what the Emperor has in plans, or so it makes it more, we just can't sit back and do what we thought we did or could do. We have to go out and do more, and because somebody's got to do something.
Yeah, I think the strongest statement they made was about that they're shutting down the cloning, not because they want to stop cloning, but because they want to control it. That was probably one of the biggest statements that I think they got out of seeing the information and knowing when it all began, that it was still while the Clone Wars were happening. To see that, Palpatine was playing the game all along.
I wonder if we're ever going to get more insight into Sifo-Dyas and how and why the cloning operation got started in the first place. The clone army was started in the first place, because it's just kind of a throwaway line in the movies, and it's mentioned a couple times in the other series, but I've never really understood the justification that Sifo-Dyas seems to have had for ordering a clone army, which must have been a huge budgetary drain on somebody.
I think there was a Clone Wars episode about finding him. I'd have to go back and look that up.
Maybe. He was pretty definitively shown to be dead, though.
And I think that's why it was, they thought he was dead. They had found his ship and then realized that he was still alive. And I don't remember what season that was in. Yeah, I'd have to look that one up.
We'd have to look that one up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you wonder if the whole clone army is just a distraction from the Emperor's desire to clone himself.
And it's interesting too with the way, even, whether you're in the Mandalorian universe, which is years later, or you're in this universe, how it all comes back to the Emperor and his need to clone, or, it's like, and it's, I don't know, it's just interesting to see how they were trying to tie that in, I think, together with both of those series running side by side too. I mean, bringing up the questions of the cloning and the Emperor with the control, or the Empire.
Yeah. Well, and it's, the real evil of cloning in the Star Wars context seems to be that that attempt to completely control. How do I put this? I don't know. It's like making a connection for me with our Catholic understanding of the body as, the body is the expression of the soul, and that the body is God's gift, and it is a good thing, and that by getting into cloning and wanting to clone himself and or create a clone army and or whatever else he's doing in terms of cloning, the Emperor is trying to assert absolute control over the body, and turn the body into a tool or an object to be used for power rather than a gift to be received and celebrated and expressed. And it's, again, I don't know how explicitly Star Wars is intending to touch on that understanding of the human condition, but I know it's setting off connections in my own brain.
Well,
I have to
sometimes.
say, go ahead,
Go
John.
ahead. I was just going to say with the cloning though, I don't know so much in this this series, but The Mandalorian too. They do talk about like the amount of times over and over and over they have to do stuff, and it's like just a throwaway of, okay, if we did this, oh, didn't work, try this, it didn't work, it didn't, and you get the feeling that there are certain characters, I don't think like that way of, okay, we'll just keep testing and hope it works, or okay, let's test this and do it that way, whereas then other characters are more concerned about maybe trying to do it a way in which less loss of life, or I don't know, something along those lines.
And I say Nala Se, as far as her cloning projects, she's the only one who intentionally made unique clones when she made the Bad Batch and Omega.
Yeah, that we know of. Yeah.
Yeah, so they have they have unique personalities, unique traits. So she was letting the uniqueness of the individual shine forth rather than cookie cutter throwaway.
So what do you think Omega's uniqueness is? I mean, this idea that Omega is the key to controlling Nala Se. Obviously, Nala Se cares about Omega, but I mean, there's kind of been the implication right from the beginning of the series that there is something particularly special about Omega. And some have speculated, oh, she's force sensitive, or that she has some other gift or power or something like that.
The obvious is she's a woman. she's a girl. I mean, that's like the one thing that makes her unique from her brothers. So there's, the whole different feminine genius perspective there. So I like that. Just to get a different take on the world, a different viewpoint as far as the clone world goes.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched like the Clone Wars stuff yet, the series anyways. But from what I've seen with the Bad Batch and Nala Se is, I've always kind of thought, she had that special connection with her, kind of like a mother in a sense and daughter. And that's kind of why I think, if you put her in, it's one thing to say, and, I only, I have one daughter who's 12, almost 13. But, it's like, it's one thing when I look at my life and I say, oh, I can handle this, I can do this, and it's not as big a deal to me, I know I can deal with it. But then when you think about how it impacts your daughter, then it's, okay, I got to do something more, or, that's where then the protection and more so, and I can find more concern and stuff like that. And it's kind of, I can, it's one thing, then when I start looking, or then I see a much bigger impact of certain things, and, and that, I mean, that's always made it, I'm like, I know I can handle it for myself, but, with my daughter, I gotta, you want to be protective, but then you also want to build the skills that she needs then to be able to deal with the things too and stuff. And that's where I've, found it. And I think that's what Nala Se. It's like she can deal with being imprisoned and maybe what they throw at her, but then if they start hurting or doing something with Omega, well, then that's ratcheted up to a whole different level. And
although, as Kathryn was saying, the Bad Batch are her children in kind of a similar way that Omega is, but she has a care for Omega that she doesn't seem to have for the others. And I don't know, maybe this is a sort of a, the Joseph is the child of my old age kind of, my youngest is my favorite.
She did let her grow naturally, so she would have had to have had touch time with Omega.
That's right, because Omega is technically older than the Bad Batch, isn't she?
Yeah, she's a year older than them.
Like chronologically, she's older.
Yeah, So, but
I'd forgotten that. Good point.
Yeah, so Nala Se would have been holding her as an infant and feeding her and caring for her in a way that she did not do with the Bad Batch. The Bad Batch was just, in a tube for so long and then in the program for so long and their own special training. But it's definitely a different feeling when you have someone that you're holding and caring for and nurturing.
Yeah.
And if
raising.
Well, yeah, because they were raised as soldiers. And she probably had more of your traditional, I guess what you could, Kaminoan traditional raising of growing up, though.
They used to dress alike. That was so cute.
Yeah.
It's true.
So, but I mean, so I could see a difference. Well, a lot of differences there, I guess. But even though they're all related, the special connection that Nala Se has.
Well, let us hope we get to see that relationship developed and paid off as the series continues. Any other final thoughts on this episode? I mean,
well, one thing I kind of always wonder is like, and I think you have it too, or mention it, is the whole, do the Imperials know that the Bad Batch is alive? Because every time they talk about an Imperial shuttle came in and left, it's like, well, who else could it be? It's like, I mean, it's just kind of, and who was it? And I thought in some prior episodes recently too, they're, oh yeah, if if who's the one that's with the Imperials right now?
Oh, Echo?
No.
Or Crosshair.
And if Crosshair could have survived what happened on the city, then, of course, then they could have survived too. And, but it just seems like, at least my initial interpretation of the way Dr. Hemlock looked at it was like, he didn't think much of, okay, there was a shuttle that got away. Oh, okay, well, we'll see if we can find it kind of thing. But we got all the villagers and we took care of the beast and da-da-da-da. But
I mean, the official report in the Empire is that the Bad Batch were killed, and Crosshair has supported the official story.
Mm-hmm.
And anything else with official story was buried in a previous episode.
Yeah.
When they got rid of what was his name?
Rampart.
Yeah, Admiral Rampart.
They got rid of him. So that kind of, added to the cover up. So not too many people on Coruscant would be digging for information necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Although it wouldn't surprise me if Palpatine himself was aware or had access to that knowledge anyway. Many possibilities.
Oh yeah.
This episode definitely felt like it ramped us back into a season-wide plot arc, where the Bad Batch is moving forward in kind of a bigger story. And so I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, we left the Western and back into space.
Yep. Well, thank you two. And should also take a moment to thank the patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Star Wars. This week, we'd like to especially thank Alexander S., Thomas H., Jesse G., Daniel Z., and Roberto B. Their generous donations make it possible for us to continue this podcast and all of the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. You can also follow us, subscribe to our podcast on any podcast platform of your choice. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and you can also check out our SQPN YouTube channel. You'll find previous episodes of Secrets of Star Wars and all of our other shows at sqpn.com. And for Star Wars, it's sqpn.com/Star Wars. Send us feedback by emailing us at starwars@sqpn.com. And you can follow us on most social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. We're on Twitter at SQPN. And maybe the most interesting place, we have a really active Discord community. So if you go to our website, sqpn.com/Discord, you can get an invite link there. Looking forward to seeing you or talking with you next week when we get on to the next episode of The Bad Batch. Like I said, The Bad Batch is moving forward, and having seen the rest of the season, it really keeps going. So can't wait to hear what next week's podcast talks about. Till then, John, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
Thank you. It was fun.
And Kathryn, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm enjoying this.
And once again, I have been Robert King. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy, The Catholics of Oz. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Oz.